Testing, testing, testing. All right, thank you. Thank you to the soundboard.
Yeah. When? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here for I think it's the last of the City of Oakland's budget forums. So thank you for coming out on this beautiful Saturday afternoon in District 3. I think it's most appropriate to begin with the host of this event today, that is Pastor Michael Wallace. If you could come up, we want to appreciate you for having us here. So if you could just get the day started, I would appreciate it.
I want to say good afternoon to all of you. Again, I want to welcome you to the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church right here in the city of West Oakland. I want to let you know a couple things. We have been a part of this community for 103 years. Yes, yes. So needless to say, Mount Zion have seen all the changes of West Oakland, have been a part of making sure that our community is grounded and that our needs of our community are met. We try to be a community impact church, that we offer a variety and a plethora of services to the community to empower the citizens and community members of West Oakland. As I said, we've been here 103 years. I mean, to your surprise, I know, I haven't been here quite 103, okay? But I have been here for the last 17 and a half years. And so I want to say welcome to this special space, and we're looking forward to moving our community and our city forward. We're excited by our new mayor, Honorable Barbara Lee. Let's put our hands together for her. Yes. And we are so grateful for our tremendous and wonderful city council member, none other than Carol Fife. And so today, we're gathering so that they can share resources that will be available to address the myriad of issues that's facing our community, as well as to hear from you. And so this would be more of a listening campaign so that they can move our city forward. But again, West Oakland has always had great resilience. We have always been a community that have worked together to solve our issues and to move our city in the right direction. So Again, let's let the spirit of West Oakland continue to thrive through all of our new residents of this community, and I just believe that our best days are still ahead of us. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you to the church for having us. Thank you to Councilmember Fife for her leadership and partnership in putting this together. My name is Sean Maher. I work for you in the City Administrator's Office at the City of Oakland. We're really grateful to you all for being here today to talk about the budget, to talk about how we move forward together as a city. It means a lot that you're spending your Saturday afternoon here with us. We're excited to hear your questions. We're excited to get your feedback. We're excited to share some information with you about what's being proposed. And as we are coming together, we'd like to start with some community agreements. We are forming and reinvigorating community by being here together today. And we have 3 suggestions that we like to open with that we're all agreeing to as we come together. The first is that we are here to learn. We know that many of our community members are here to get the information directly from us about what's being proposed, what's in the budget, what might be in the budget, what are we doing about the problem I care about most. We are also here to learn from you. We are here to learn from your questions, learn from your suggestions, learn from the conversation that we have together today. So we are all here to learn as a community. Second, and this is closely related, we are all here to ask questions. There is no bad or silly or wrong question today. We are grateful that you're here. If there is something that you care about, it matters and it should be asked about. So we are thankful that you're here. This is a complex topic. I have to pedal the bike real hard to keep up with it. So I really want to emphasize that there is no question too big or too small today. We're just really grateful that you're here and excited to hear them. And then our final community agreement is that we value everyone's advocacy and care for the community. We're going to talk about important topics, and we're not all going to agree about what those topics mean to us or what needs to be done about them. What we do know is that we all agree that we are here together because we care about this community and making it a better place and making a better place for our community. So we enter into this conversation honoring that together. So right here at the outset, we want to make sure that we're getting some input from everyone who's participating. So everyone that's here, I hope this will work for you. I think the screen is big enough. If you have your phones with you, please take them out and turn on your camera and look at that QR code that's up on those screens. That's going to pull up something called a Mentimeter. We're going to ask for your feedback right here at the top. We're going to ask, I believe the first question is going to be, what is one word that's top of mind for you when you hear about the city budget? We've gotten some really good responses from folks on this throughout these. And it's really helpful just for us to hear from you before we dive into the presentations themselves. What is on your mind? What is top of mind for you? What are the questions, concerns, priorities, fears, things that you're excited about that this budget may touch on? And I think I saw some nods that folks were able to start getting in there and submitting some responses. Can we put the QR code back up? Thank you to the folks running our tech table. Are folks able to see that, or do we need it to come back to? Okay, reconnecting to the internet.
If those who don't have phones with a QR code, what do you suggest?
Well, if folks don't have phones or the system's not working, we've also done a little bit of an in-person lightning round. Oh, and I see you've got a QR code or a. Fantastic. Glad to see that, sir. We will be throughout today's program. We're going to be gathering written questions that you might have for us. We're going to spend the back half of the program running through questions that we've received. We got a number of them through RSVPs when folks registered online. We're going to start with those, but we're also going to be gathering questions from you here in real time. So if you have received an index card and a pen to write those down, please feel free to raise your hand when it's ready, and someone on the team will come and pick it up from you. If you need a card, feel free to flag one of us down, and we'll do the same. So I'm seeing some answers already starting to pop into the Mentimeter responses. I'm going to read out some of the words that folks are submitting. The biggest one I see here right off the bat, the words get bigger the more people submit that word, so the bigger the word, the more folks have that same word on their mind today. Overtime looks real big to me. I see that right out of the gate, so I know we're going to want to talk about that today. Choices and accountability, safety, priorities, bankruptcy, some concern about that, illegal dumping, hopeful, responsibility, opportunity, accountability, police, priorities, shortfall, hopeful, sober spending, responsiveness, efficiency, essential services, mystery. I'm really glad someone put mystery because I know that this can be a topic that feels that way. Cuts to macro. Stressful. I'm glad someone shared how they were feeling there. I think that says politics. I see the word limiting. I see the word broke. I see the word waste. Mismanagement. Misuse and wasteful. Confusing. And deficit. These are great responses. Thank you all very much for kicking us off with some of your own feedback. We're gonna move next into some of the presentations themselves, but before we do, we want to bring up a community member from a board that does a lot of really incredible volunteer work on behalf of the community. The Budget Advisory Commission is an incredible group of volunteer community members who engage with the process, who dig into the budget with us, who are able to speak to us from outside the city, hold the city accountable, give the city advice, and also seek feedback from the community. So we are really grateful to have one of the commissioners from the Budget Advisory Commission with us here. Can we please give a warm round of welcome to Larissa?
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's so nice to be here today. Hello, West Oakland. So my name's Larissa, and I'm a member of the Budget Advisory Commission. We are a city commission comprised of resident volunteers, and we get together every month and look at the budget. We are responsible for doing two main things, and that is to provide recommendations to City Council on the budget, and also to provide feedback and recommendations to City Council on the budget process. So how the town halls went, the way in which City Council is soliciting feedback and input from residents, etc. And one of the things that helps inform our work is a resident survey that we are required to administer every 2 years. So my question to you is, do you know about the survey, and did you have an opportunity to respond to the survey? No, I see a lot of 1 hand, 2 hands, 3 hands, okay. Yeah, okay, well that's really good. That's good input. That's good feedback for me. We have to do the survey every year, and unfortunately this year, because we have a budget deficit, don't know if you heard, we actually ended up doing it ourselves as the commission. And we got almost 8,000 responses, which include Spanish, Chinese, and English, from every district in the city. But clearly, we fell short. So that's really good feedback for us. It was all online, so I know that that's not ideal. But what I'm here to do is to share with you the priorities that came out of that survey. So one of the priorities was safety in all its forms, right? And who's surprised to know that residents in Oakland are concerned and want to prioritize safety? Are you surprised, sir? Oh, okay, right. No surprises there, right? I'm sure that you guys could also tell me what the other priorities were. Throw one out for me. I want to warm you guys up for the council member. Homelessness and housing, yes. Homelessness and housing. public and garbage. Oh, have you heard my talk already? Very good. Those were the three. Cleanliness, graffiti / garbage, housing and homelessness, and public safety. So those were the three priorities, and yeah, not surprised. The other thing about our survey that we learned is two things, and then I'm done, because I know they're going to start probably playing the music. The other thing is that, you know what, Oaklanders love Oakland. Now, who's surprised about that? None of us, right? That's why you're here, because we all love Oakland. And residents really expressed a deep desire to help the city, to roll up their sleeves and do some work. We got really great, suggestions around the budget. Folks are willing to pay more if they're able so that others can pay less, which, I think is one of the reasons why we love Oakland. And folks, it was very values driven. We heard back from residents that, we pay for services and all we want are services, right? No more, no less, right? Some of us are willing to pay more if we can so that others can pay less. And that's, I think, the spirit of Oakland, right? So really quickly, I don't think that my slides are up today. So there's a website on the city website. There's a page. So if you just Google or Yahoo, whatever it is that you do, Oakland Budget Advisory Commission, our webpage should come up. And on that webpage, you can go back and read the responses and take a look at all of the survey responses. And also, we just shared our recommendations on the budget, on this current budget, to City Council. Two of my colleagues from the commission presented to the City Council last week. And you can also read our memo and take a look at those slides as well, so that you know what the work that we're doing. And then also, right before I go, I just want to say that we need members on the commission. So if budgets is your thing, and not just budgets, but community engagement, participation, transparency, accountability, please apply. And you can find out how to apply by going to our Budget Advisory Commission webpage. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Larissa. We are so grateful to the community members who participate in the Budget Advisory Commission. Your leadership and engagement is priceless. By being here today, all of you have gotten involved. You are being involved right now. Sometimes folks ask, what else can I do? What are some other options? You can attend council meetings. You can contact your council member. Of course, we have our council member here today. The Budget Advisory Commission is another way to get even deeper in that process. So if you have that interest, please follow up with us after this meeting. We are going to head now into a quick presentation on the budget basics. I'll deliver that. I know that most folks are here because you want to know what's actually in the proposal, and I will move through my slides quickly, I promise. I just want to make sure that as we head into that discussion that everyone has the same information about how the process works and what the constraints are that really define what the task for our decision makers and our leadership is. Before I dive into that, I do want to quickly recognize we are joined today by Councilmember Ken Houston from District 7 in East Oakland. We're glad to see him here.
It's an honor being new, 143 days, District 7, son of Oakland, to sit on the council with Councilmember Fife. She's giving me direction. You know, I can be a little wild sometimes. She calms me down. And we're basically working on core services, that we need. And they said we need safety. We need to stop the illegal dumping. We need to embrace the homeless encampments and also move them. We need to clear our sidewalks. There's so many things that we have to do to make our safety, bring back the basic core services of public safety back to our community. So I just wanted to say I'm here to support her. That's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We should also acknowledge we have representatives from Senator Jesse Arreguin's office as well. If you could just stand up and wave.
I believe Senator Arguin has sent his office to every single one of these. So we want to thank them for their commitment and for engaging with us across the city. Thank you so much. Okay, diving into the budget basics, and I'm going to ask the folks managing the slides to help me move through them pretty quick. I'm going to skip a few. If anyone here would like me to stop or go back and repeat a slide, I'm happy to. This presentation is online at oaklandca.gov/budget, so you can review it anytime you'd like. Again, I really want to make sure that we get straight to the meat of what's actually being proposed. So feel free to stop me if you'd like me to slow down or go back to a slide that I skipped, but I am going to try to gun through these pretty quick. In broad strokes, the city of Oakland has a 2-year budget cycle. We are approaching the end and the beginning of that cycle right now. We can go to the next slide to sort of show that cycle. How it typically works is over the last several months, interim Mayor Kevin Jenkins, prior to the arrival of Mayor Barbara Lee, worked with the administration, including the city administrator and finance director who are here with us today, to put together a mayor's draft proposed budget. That gets released at the beginning of May, and from there, the city council takes leadership over the process. We're in that space right now, where the mayor's proposed budget has been out for a few weeks, and the city council now has a couple of months to make that proposal better and adopt something by the end of June. The budget that they adopt will be in effect and will be funding services and programs and projects from July 1st of this year through June 30th, 2 years from now. So that's where we are in the process. Can we skip to the general fund versus restricted fund slide? Thank you. So one number that I know drops a lot of jaws when we share it is that the city has a $2.3 billion annual budget, which is a lot of money. It doesn't sound like or feel like a lot of money. It absolutely is. Why I bring it up here and what the context that I want to make sure that we're setting for the discussion is that there's a difference between what are called restricted funds out of that money and general purpose funds. Most of what our elected decision makers have to make decisions with is in the general purpose fund. So that's about a third of that 2.3 billion that you see on that chart up there. The remaining 60-something%, roughly 2/3, is what's called restricted funds. That's money that's coming to the city to deliver services based on a really specific agreement with whoever is providing that money. So a good example might be a federal grant that we get to implement a park project. If we submit a grant application and the feds say, okay, you can have some money to do that park project, we have to use that money on that park project. We don't get to make a decision to use it somewhere else. Or if a ballot measure, a tax is passed and that tax says in how it's written, this has to be spent on public safety. We have to spend that money on public safety. We don't have as much discretion over how it gets used. So it's an important piece of context that we just want to set out front. That one way or another, we are talking about large amounts of money and significant deficits that we're closing and significant investments that we need to make. But I wanted to make sure that distinction was clear about what our decision makers really have the most discretion over. Next slide. I'm going to do 2 more slides, and then I will bring up our budget team. One other big factor that the city has to engage with when we're working on managing our budget is structural deficit. And people often ask, sort of, what does that mean? That refers to when we have an ongoing permanent expense that is greater than the revenue that we have to pay for it. So a good metaphor that our budget administrator has been using is think about when, as a human, when your rent goes up, but your job doesn't start paying you enough more. That's going to affect your budget really directly. A larger version of that, or sort of a macro version of that, is what the city is going through. We have years-old, years-long commitments, particularly to retired employees. The city has a workforce that does not earn Social Security and depends on pensions and our retirement agreements to support them after they retire. And the expenses both of those retirement benefits and of the health care that we provide for them is going up significantly and has for quite some time. So we have sort of a structural challenge to address when we're trying to figure out how to do a balanced budget that invests in the services that we know are fundamental to what we're here to do while managing those commitments. And then the last slide I want to share is this last one here. The other thing that sort of constrains or defines the task in front of our decision makers is that the city of Oakland must have a balanced budget. Unlike some other kinds of agencies, we don't have discretion over this. We aren't able to sort of float a bigger expenditure than we have revenue coming in. We are required every year to be passing a balanced budget. So when we're asking our decision makers to make investments in things that are important, they're having to do so in the context of finding out how that works on the other side of the ledger. Any action on one side requires balancing action on the other, and that's just part of how we approach the process. So I will stop there. I'm going to bring up I'm going to bring up our council member to talk a bit about her priorities, and then we'll get into the administration's proposal. Councilmember Fife.
Y'all probably thought I wasn't speaking today. No. But again, I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to especially thank Ken Houston. I see there's some folks from Oakland Works here. I remember, gosh, it feels like 15, maybe 20 years ago that Ken and I organized with Oakland Works and Brian Beveridge and Margaret Gordon and a host of other folks to get appropriate use of a community benefits agreement for West Oakland. And it feels like ages ago now, but to be the representative of this district that I love so much is an honor, and it is very, very difficult work. Very difficult work. But I show up every day willing and ready to do that. I see a lot of familiar faces here, so again, I want to thank you all for being here. I wanted to touch really quickly on the broader context that we're all living in right now, and then get a little more granular about the budget and what my priorities are. And please bear with me. I'm going to try to keep this as short as possible, but we are living in a particular moment in history right now. And I know it feels really, really personal to us in Oakland and in this district, but all over this country, all over the world, people are struggling for basic needs. When it comes to healthcare, housing, education, we are struggling in all of those areas. We are experiencing wealth inequality like no other time in history. So when you think about Oakland is really struggling, it's my block that's hurting, it's my neighbors that are experiencing some of the worst things that we can possibly experience. It's not. And I hate to go back to COVID, but COVID literally changed everything. And not in the ways that you're thinking of, but COVID literally changed everything. And we were on, I got a lot of, I'm sorry, Pastor, I had to watch myself. I got a lot of stuff for you. For using precipice. But during COVID, we were literally on the precipice of changing things in this country that so many of us that are active and organizers have been trying to change for decades. And what I'm talking about is the social safety net that didn't exist for a lot of us. There are marginalized folks or people who look like me or other folks who are disabled or who identify differently regarding their genders. There are lots of different groups in this country who have felt marginalized and have not had the actual tangible resources that they need to be okay in this country. But COVID and our ability to address the oil and gas industries, to give money for early childhood education was the first time we saw an impact to food insecurity for children in this country. It's the first time we eliminated hunger in this country. It's the first time we actually had our entire government try to make sure that workers were okay with additional health care, small businesses. It was not enough, but we started to see what is a bad word to a lot of people, a socialized safety net that impacted every American in the United States. And so what you've seen since then is a drastic move away from trying to socialize our system so that everybody can thrive. And just really in COVID, we were just trying to maintain. We're just trying to be okay. But the CARES Act, which our now mayor helped to get resources to Oakland for, ARPA, which came to Oakland to give us resources to get through that time, those started to rebuild communities where people were going without being hungry in ways that they hadn't before. People were having access to health care. Access to mutual aid networks started to strengthen where we were actually looking out for each other. Masking to make sure our people that were our neighbors who were sensitive and immunocompromised were okay. And in our rush to get back to normal, which was never normal, in our rush to get back to the way things were, which were never okay for most folks, we've lost some of that. We've lost our way. And all of those ideas that started to build people's lives are now called woke. And so we see a movement for people trying to move away from those socialized systems that help people maintain their lives. And so now we have these culture wars where we can't even talk to our neighbors anymore. Our district is better than that, though. This district is better than that. But I will say that millions and millions of dollars go into keeping us at odds with each other. And that's why I do my very best to, regardless of what you think about me, what you think about what you think about me, because most people don't know, because most people have not taken the time to sit down or refuse to have conversations with me about what I really believe. Because the reality is, it doesn't matter what I believe. It matters what you all want to have done in this district, because that is what I'm fighting for. It is, sometimes it's hard to balance, because sometimes folks are like, get rid of homeless people by any means necessary. Where other folks are like, well, they're humans too. We have to find a balance in how we keep our sidewalks clear so our folks that are in wheelchairs have access, and that ADA is something that we recognize in the city. And we also have to understand that it is not humane to have people living on the streets where they don't have access to water, and access to sanitation, and access to a place to use the restroom. It is not humane. So my priorities are the same as they've been my entire 30 years of being active in Oakland, which is to create a clean, safe city where our babies can thrive. That includes access to Head Start. That includes making sure our seniors have housing. That includes making a community where people that look like me are not 70% of the homeless population. So my budget priorities are a clean and safe city. I think they're the same as most people here. I'm positive that they are the same as my entire council and our mayor and our city administration. The devil is in the details. How do we get there? I will be honest, I'm concerned about some of the cuts in this budget, but I'm also well aware that we can't have everything that we want in this particular moment, and it's gonna take us a little bit of time to get where we need to be, to where we're healing from this structural deficit. And you know I'm gonna keep it real that even in this structural deficit, if we get out of it, if we don't control police overspending, then we're gonna be right back here every single year, every single budget. So I personally believe that with all of the parcel taxes, I'm sorry to all my folks who are having to pay all these parcel taxes, I don't believe in regressive taxes, but the reality is I believe we have a lot of different revenue streams that will allow us to get to the places where we need to be. I also know that the additional measures that the council and administration have put forward are going to also help us get where we need to be. Right now it's just tough. So what I'm gonna ask everybody here today is, when you think about what you want, I also need you to tell me what you're willing to give up, because that's the moment that we're in. And I am elated to be joined by the professionals as well as my community members who are going to help me make the best decisions. It's not what we necessarily want, but I know and I'm confident in the professionals that we have, in the departments that I work closely with, as well as all of you, that we'll get to where we need to be, and we're gonna do it as best as we can, and we're gonna do it with integrity, we're gonna do it with transparency, honesty, and care. And that's all I have to share for right now.
Thank you so much, Councilmember. So with that, we'll dive into what's being proposed in the mayor's, the interim mayor's proposed budget. We'll bring up Finance Director Aaron Roseman, and we also have City Administrator Justin Johnson. They will tag team this part a little bit. Director Roseman.
Thank you. Welcome, or thank you for having me here. Erin Roseman, Director of Finance. I'll take you through what's in the actual budget, in the interim mayor's proposed budget. So I wanted to start off with just the overview. This biennial budget from fiscal year 25-27 focuses on community safety, fiscal stability, addressing the structural deficit, and prioritizing essential services. Next slide, please. When we talk about prioritizing public safety, it is comprehensive in the police, fire, and violence prevention. Of most concern to most as priorities of the council members and of the interim mayor is how do we address police staffing. So in this budget, there are 3 police academies in each of the fiscal years and 1 fire academy in each of the fiscal years. The police staffing would have authorized staffing of 678 officers in each year, and police overtime at $33 million and $38 million in each respective year. We also understand that Measure NN, as it just recently passed, has a requirement to get to 700 officers. This is a plan to get us there. These 3 academies in each year does not actually achieve 700, but it gets us closer to it. There's a high level of attrition in the police department, and so having the 3 academies in each of the budgetary years helps us get closer to that. Additionally, in the fire department, there is 1 academy for each to help the fire department maintain their current staffing. And as of concern to most, there had been the fire engines that had been browned out. This budget has 2 of those engines turned back on. However, there's 1 in this budget, 1 of those engines still turned off. But there's opportunity for, through council amendments, that may be able to bring that back. The Violence Prevention Department maintains its current funding and focuses on ceasefire priorities. So we've talked a lot about the budget deficit and the structural deficit, and we started with $138 million deficit, and that's a large amount to overcome, even in a $2 billion budget. And so there's, seems to be some budgetary magic, but there isn't. It's hard choices that have closed that budgetary gap. And so you can see on the right side of the presentation how we achieved that. So we'll start off with the sales tax that was recently approved. That provided $20 million worth of funding to help close the gap. Then there's additional revenue enhancement measures that we've decided to employ in this budget, and those are 2 additional revenue resources. On the other side of the ledger, there's several reduction in expenditures. And so the biggest reduction is $60 million worth of contracts and O&M. So we've asked our departments to do the same or less, so reduce their budgets by $60 million. Additionally, there's $18 million in personnel cuts. And then there's the maintenance of effort. So those are the baseline that is intended to be budgeted in the general purpose fund that is not being budgeted. So that brings in another $16 million. You have the fire engine that's continued to be browned out, and then some other reductions. So when you add all of that up, it gets to the $138 million. That's the budget magic, or otherwise just the how we closed this deficit. And that's a lot to get out of 1 year. Next slide, please. When we look at this year's, these next 2 years' budget, as Sean talked about the restricted and the general purpose fund. The general purpose fund is $788 million, where the restricted funds are $1.3 billion, for a total of $2.1 billion in the first year. I will note that this current year budget that we're in is at $807 million. So it is a reduction. So we're going from 807 to 788 in the general purpose fund. That's a $20 million change, but understanding that we also had to cut $138 million in the structural difference. So it's been $150 million worth of changes to get us here. We're on the path to trying to achieve stability and to offset the structural deficit that had been going forward. Next slide. So here, I'll turn it over to the city administrator to discuss the core services that are included in the budget.
Good afternoon. Justin Johnson, City Administrator. So I wanted to, recognizing the time, when we talk about delivery of core services, and what does that mean? As we've already heard time and time again, it's really maintaining the core services of our public infrastructure, parks, those sorts of things, but also, as Councilmember Fife has mentioned, and many of you all have articulated, addressing the homelessness and having housing solutions is certainly something that's important to our community. So as we focus in on the budget, listening to the priorities and the budget as proposed by Interim Mayor Jenkins, this is what we seek to certainly accomplish. There's also a continued support for community services such as parks and libraries. I know that's been a topic of discussion in many respects on how do we maintain our parks. Several years ago, decisions were made to shift the maintenance responsibilities of our parks and facilities from the Department of Parks and Recreation to our Public Works Department. However, recognizing that there is an opportunity to maybe do something different to try to maintain those parks. So there is a move to shift that responsibility back to the respective department. Next slide, please. As we've talked about at length, the illegal dumping and the encampments, there is an emphasis on, in this particular budget, to maintain some semblance of service. As the councilmember said, we certainly want to do more, but just a recognition that there are tough choices that have to be made. We are really trying our best to hone in. If we can't have the number of people that we feel as though we need to address the illegal dumping issues, do we need to revisit how we deliver that service? And I've mentioned several times through these presentations, it's really looking at transitioning wholly from a complaint-driven process to address illegal dumping to a zone-based approach to address illegal dumping. And more practically speaking, what does that mean when our crews, when they come in the morning, they have a list of priorities that they are to address for that day. However, many of you all have seen it, I've seen myself and the crews acknowledge it, that there are a lot of times when we are out addressing hot spots that that have been called in by way of our 311 system. In spite of all that, we're passing certain hot spots just to get to another. And so if we have the structure where we actually are working in a specific zone, then we're addressing all the issues in that particular zone with that same crew day in and day out. And it's really an approach that we've taken in years past, but there was a transition quite a few years ago. So again, trying to do something different to get a better handle on the issues. Also acknowledging the fact that abandoned auto enforcement has been a big issue in the district. And so Councilmember Fife has been very intentional about trying to make sure we're showing up our abandoned auto crews. She's also led an effort to really try to identify how we can utilize the private sector to help address the issue, specifically the processing of many of these unrecognizable vehicles in and throughout the community. How can we quickly get them off the street and they be taken as essentially scrap metal, which is what it ends up becoming, as opposed to having to tow it to specific lots. And I really appreciate the fact that the private sector has been willing to step in a mighty way to help address many of these issues. And as we talk about holistically the addressing of the illegal dumping, but it's the enforcement piece that we also acknowledge. Time and time again, we've seen a video of the Tesla driver, whoever took that video. I don't know who you are. If you're here, thank you. If you are here, I really appreciate that. That's sound high quality video footage, so thank you. But it really leans into how real it is that from an enforcement standpoint, that has to be a big priority. And it's not just what we do on our end, on the city's end, it's also having the ability and mechanisms in place at the county level to prosecute. One highlight, I'll say, with our district attorney has really said, you know what, I think it is important for us to start prosecuting some of those cases, whereas in years past, I see my slide went out, as in years past, we've had opportunities to really investigate as well as enforce issues coming forward. So I'm really thankful for their willingness to step in and support our community. One thing that is highlighted, and I did see in some of the questions, really conversations around the potholes and the public infrastructure. I want to make sure we acknowledge in this budget, it does include funding associated with issuance of bonds, specifically for affordable housing, transportation, and public works. On the affordable housing piece, there's $180 million allocated over the next few years for affordable housing and $50 million per year for our transportation improvements to maintain our public right of way. And of course, we certainly will want to do more, but what is the capacity that we have and what can we go to the bond market for is certainly important. But there has been a lot of frustration because of the fact that we did not issue bonds on last year. One of the key reasons why is because of what our financial situation was. As we go through the bond process, which is about 7 months or so, one of the most important mechanisms that we have to have in place is an adopted balanced budget. So I really appreciate the council really taking holistically, trying to make sure that we can get this budget balanced as quickly as possible, because that is a significant milestone that we have to have in place in order to go through the bond market. And so, but I'm glad that we are in a place and we are on track to issue those bonds before the end of the fiscal year. Thank you. In addition, we talked a bit about the summer, about Parks and Recreation, but also more specifically the acknowledgement that there is funding in this budget to maintain our summer programs as well as our after-school programs. I know it's been a big topic of discussion, so that is maintained in this budget. One aspect that I will state is in April of last year, when we had to make some pretty significant budget reductions, and speaking to one of our core constituencies, specifically in our senior centers, one of the things that they even brought to the table and said, you know what, we want to maintain our services because this is so critical to our life, to our livelihoods, and our social networks. We will offer up some solutions. And so we were able to, one, say thank you, but also implement those solutions, which was a reduction in hours. We are maintaining those reductions in hours, but however, we certainly want to get to a place where we can have full-time hours for our senior centers going forward. But again, as we go through this budget process, what are those trade-offs that we want as a community? So I'm glad that there's something still in place to try to at least maintain service levels where they are. But if once or if that opportunity does present itself to expand those hours, certainly looking forward to it. All right, next slide, please. In addition, as I've kind of talked about a little bit, so the coordination of services with other entities. One thing that has been discussed quite a bit, and I'm really grateful for some of the hard work that Councilmember Fife has led, it's specifically engaging with our partners at Alameda County, because we recognize the city of Oakland has been carrying a lot of water for our community, trying to fill in the gap on so many levels. And one of those areas is really trying to establish keen partnerships to get a better handle on homelessness in our community, who's doing what, and make sure that there's a clean, more collaborative approach that's in place. So certainly appreciate that. One other aspect and one topic of discussion that we've heard a lot about is that of the condition of Head Start. As many of you all know, our Head Start program, that the funding comes from the federal government. That funding is still in place in this year's budget and next year's budget, so very excited about that. I know we have some folks from our Head Start teams here, so I certainly want to acknowledge you all in your hard work and advocacy. Absolutely, please. And the advocacy that you all continue to put forth. So I just want to tell y'all thank you, publicly for your hard work and dedication. In addition to that, the maintaining of our summer youth programs, that is continuing to place, as well as our after-school programming. Funding is available as well. And finally, as we talk about our transit occupational tax and how can we better get funding specific to our culture and arts programs, the philanthropic community in Oakland has said, hey, look, we want to be a part of the solution. I can't sit here and say that we have a specific plan in place as it stands right now, but they have stepped in and said, hey, look, we want to be a part of the solution. But one other way that our philanthropic community has really stepped in, I'm really grateful for the leadership of Mayor Lee, who's helped broker a lot of these conversations where people have stepped in. As I mentioned, the after-school programs, as well as our summer youth programs, so the meals that we provide for our communities, the East Bay Community Foundation has stepped up in a mighty way, as well as Eat, Learn, Play, and the Alameda County Food Bank, to the tune of about $370,000 to fund meals for our young people this summer. So I'm so grateful. If any representatives are here, I want to tell y'all thank you. I really appreciate it. And it's one of those ways where a community like Oakland that is so giving and we come together, that's a way in which our philanthropic community has stepped in. And so we're certainly hopeful to continue that type of partnership and relationship as it relates to our culture and arts programming. And Aaron, I will transition to you.
Thank you for that. So we've been able to focus on those core services, but there are impacts enabled that are required to be able to move to do that. One of the biggest impacts is 400 positions out of this budget are being reduced. However, 85 of these positions were already frozen and vacant, so there was no individuals in those positions. And then 240 of them have been funded in the current year and also vacant. So there are positions that are being taken away, future services that won't be performed because those positions won't be there. However, there's only 80 positions that are currently filled that will have impact to individuals. There are still other vacant positions in other departments and other parts of the restricted funds where those 80 individuals or the majority of those individuals could transfer to. And so we expect to be fewer than a dozen that would actually transition away from the organization in a layoff. But as we go through the process and council makes amendments, there may be opportunities for those individuals also. But we are reducing 400 positions in this budget. There are additional challenges that we are not addressing in this budget, and they're mainly external to the city. They're the federal changes. We know that the federal administration has targeted grants and programs, sanctuary cities, and so we don't have a contingency plan for that. This budget does not address that as we reduced $138 million of our current expenses to try to balance this. We still have those challenges, and those challenges are ongoing for all of us. Other issues are inflation, pension costs, and healthcare costs. These are the things that reopen our budget deficit that will cause a problem in the next year and the year after that, even though we've done all of the belt tightening and have tried to address our current structural deficit with the resources that we have. Next slide, please. One of the challenges that we've talked about is pension cost as a driver. It's one of those hidden drivers within our budget. It's not in your current staffing. It's not in our current services. They are promised pensions from decades ago, and those costs have risen. And those costs rise greater than our revenue growth, in addition to all of the other services that we're trying to provide. And so the chart that you see on the screen represents the pension costs. So the blue bars at the bottom are your active employees, and you can see it's kind of a straight line going across from year to year. So we've gotten our current pension costs under control. It's the historical pension costs that, in the orange bars above the blue, that are driving us forward. And so with each year of the next year's budget, as the bar grows, that is one of the drivers that opens up the structural deficit. So this budget, it's a 2-year budget, but we have a long-term problem that we have to address again and again and again. And so as we come to you each budget year with a new budget deficit, and how does that new magic $1 million show up, this is one of the larger drivers of that deficit. So as we move forward, this biennial budget is 2 years, but we understand the problems are longer than 2 years. And so we're working towards a medium-term to a long-term fiscal health plan to address some of these other drivers that are hidden, promises that were given before we all were around and in charge to take care of it. Some of the things that we're looking forward to in this long-term plan or medium-term plan are trying to ensure that there's the same service delivery, reliable service delivery, that we have maintained secure access to the bond market, that we are returning to compliance with all of the voter approved measures. Those things are longer than these 2 years. And so the long-term plan has to look at how do we get there? How do we bring in more revenue? How do we control expenses to make sure that we have balanced budgets going forward? And so our medium-term plan that we'll present to the mayor and the city council sometime in December will help address those longer-term issues as a component or a bigger plan for the whole community on how do we get there so that you can still have the services that you expect and deserve. Achieving structural balance is, we're in the process of doing this long-term plan. It's also a collaborative process. So it's not just administration, it's the mayor, it's the city council, it's all of you. We're here to learn from you and take back ideas because this is all of our community, not just how we see fit with our professional perspective. We understand that we need to restructure our pension benefits, and pension is something that's probably unique to government at this point. There's not many corporations or companies that offer that benefit. And so as government officials, we need to work towards keeping that cost under control and making sure that you're getting what you need. We're also working towards the multi-year plans that address infrastructure, police and fire vehicles, technology. Some of the operational challenges that we have with police is having vehicles and fire engines for the fire department, and we have to come up with strategies on how to fund those long-term because they are complements to the regular services. We also need to enhance our fiscal policies, our financial policies, to not rely on one-time use of funds and make sure that we stick to the policies that we've adopted together. And then finally, work on diversifying the revenue for this city, not just reliance on certain taxes or certain things, but how do we grow the economy, have vitality, so that the current taxes that we have bring in more revenues. And while we might have in the 2-year budget a proposed tax for the second year, it is in the second year, and we have time to get there together on how do we accomplish that. Next slide. I'll turn it over to the city administrator for this.
Thank you, Aaron. So just to close out this portion of the presentation, one of the most important aspects that we've heard a lot about is that of transparency. We recognize we won't be able to make wholesale shifts and have stark reactions, but these are incremental steps that we feel like, hey, that we can take to help address and acknowledge the fact that folks want to know a bit more, because it is a very complex sort of budget, especially local government or governmental budgeting, very different from the private sector, that we have to kind of keep in mind for our community. One of the areas I'm really appreciative of Councilmember Fife and her advocacy and support in this is highlighting, did I make it drop in my? I did? All right, cool. And highlighting grants and contracts. Where does the money go? The city of Oakland offers a lot of grants and a lot of contracts that comes out of the general fund. One of the questions is always, well, if you're giving out X amount of dollars and millions of dollars over the course of a year, what are the performance measures? Like, what are we buying for that? On the front end of our grants and contracting process, we'll issue, and the council may give the authority to the city administrator to execute a grant. But on the flip side, our staff, we're really leaning in and really pushing the envelope to say, well, what is the performance that we're receiving? And so on the front end of in the budget, you'll have a list of all known grants and contracts that we have that are being dispersed in and throughout the city. I think that's an important tool because it gives you the opportunity to ask the question, well, this grant is for this purpose, was that done? This contract is for this purpose, was that executed? Well, if it was not executed, then what is the balance and why? But also raising the question around, hey, look, you know what? We've distributed a lot of funds year over year for this purpose. It's time to make that decision, to claw that back. And in order for you all to give constructive feedback on what is important to you from a fiscal perspective, highlighting that is something that's critical and important. The other piece that's included in this budget from a fiscal perspective is funding associated with an external audit of our performance of our high-risk contracts and grants. That is certainly, it's really, really critical. We have a great partnership with our city auditor's office, who's an independent body. But I think his ability and our ability to have some level of independence, but we have to set aside funding in order for that to be audited. That's highlighted in this budget. So I'm personally just very grateful for the partnership and leadership, and as my council member, just always leaning in very heavily on having us maintain a level of performance that our community expects. And so I'm just really appreciating your support and really just pushing the needle as far as possible to make sure that we are as transparent as conceivably possible. We recognize we won't always get it right, but just having an honest conversation about where things are and being able to pivot, I think would be really, really important. So thank you.
Thank you, City Administrator Johnson. All right, so we know that folks here want to get their questions answered, so we're going to move pretty quickly through the next step. We'd like to take just a couple minutes for a transition here. If folks would like to take the next 2 or 3 minutes, if you have a card and you haven't gotten to hand it off to us yet, if you have been asking for a card, please raise your hand. While we're gathering those, and we're going to sort them and look for the questions that folks are asking the most, which we'll spend the rest of this meeting going through. If you could just take 2 or 3 minutes, turn to your neighbor, especially if it's someone that you don't know yet. We have an opportunity to strengthen community here today. Please turn to a neighbor and just spend the next 2 or 3 minutes talking about what you've heard, what you may have learned, if you have another question that this presentation prompted, and we'll come back together in about 3 minutes. Thank you. I believe the mayor's here. I don't know if she's walked in the room yet, but she's arrived on the grounds.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like we don't spend enough time focusing on our small businesses that are the second largest in paying. This is, after property tax, this is where we are, this is where bulk of the money. So they never talk about like how small businesses and businesses generate revenue. Okay. Okay.
We'll take just one more minute, and then we'll move into questions. Yes, thank you very much.
Keep stalling.
All right, folks, testing. There we go. Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to reconvene. Thank you all. I hope that that was a productive conversation. Thank you for being part of community and strengthening community by being here. We are about to jump into Q&A, but we wanted to take just a moment to recognize how grateful we are to be joined by our mayor, Barbara Lee, who's joined us today here in the church. Mayor Lee's joined us at all of the budget forums since she was sworn in, so we want to invite her just up for a moment if she would be willing to say a couple words before we get into the Q&A. Mayor?
Just very, very quickly, of course, giving honor to God, here we are. listen, just stop by to say hello and thank you. Thank you so much for engaging in this process, because this is what democracy is supposed to be about, and you know where we are in this country. And so I'm very proud of Councilmember Fife and our team with the city, because they're making sure that this budget, and it's a hard moment for us here in Oakland, as you know, but a budget is a roadmap that should reflect our values. And I believe that it's a moral document. And during these very tough times, they have really worked hard to make sure that this budget is balanced, but that we also address the structural deficit, but that we also address the services, the core services that you all deserve. And so it's really, I'm honored to be your mayor during this process, even though this is a challenging moment. But with Councilmember Fife and with our team, I'm excited, I'm hopeful, and just thank you all for being here. Look forward to the Q&A. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And so, oh, please.
I hope you all are able to have some robust conversation. You know, I don't shy away from any challenging questions, any challenging issues. If you know anything about me, you know that. I do feel like I wish I would have done more turnout. I did not know that the mayor was coming. And when I found out, I was like, oh, I'm super honored. But the reality is we have a lot of questions, and not a lot of people understand how city government works. There are some organizers in here who've been doing this for a long time, but still I keep running into people who don't know what the city administrator does versus what the city council has the ability to do, what staff can do. So I want to take, I'm not sure who should share that, but I saw some of the questions, and a lot of them are administrative in nature. They don't require a legislative approach. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, and we may need to state that. And when we get to the questions about whose responsibilities does this question fall into, because there's some education I think that I need to still do around who is responsible for what. And there are a lot of perspectives out right now around charter reform, so that makes the process cleaner. That's some of the belief of some of our groups out there, but I just wanted to make that clear. Some of this stuff is administrative, some of it is legislative. The budget is all legislative, right? It's what we get to weigh in on and choose as a council, but some of the questions as they're framed are administrative in nature. I just wanted to share that. Thank you. You need that, yes, you do so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. Great point. As we go through these questions, I'll try to hand the mic off to the lead responsible party. Although, as you say, a lot of this is partnership. A lot of it is hand in glove style, working with the city council on legislative matters, and then as the city administrator's office and the departments working in implementation under the executive authority of the mayor. There's a lot of working together. So we'll jump into some of the questions that folks asked on the cards. We also have some RSVP questions that we want to make sure we don't miss. I'll jump right in on roads are worse than ever in Oakland, Berkeley, and San Leandro. Why do we not have regular maintenance of streets, and what can community members do to draw attention to this issue? The actual funding of street maintenance, the funding question comes from the city council. The administration of actually paving our streets and filling potholes is under the city administrator and the Department of Transportation. Should we maybe start with the city administrator and then come to the council member?
Thank you, Sean. Can you reframe that as far as like, why are the conditions of the street so bad, to make it simple? Yes, so I will say there is a regular street maintenance and paving plan and program. So sort of twofold. With respect to the paving, there's a specific paving schedule that our teams actually go by. The paving season typically is from March to about November. But that's pretty consistent amongst just across the country. But as we get into that rainy season, getting into towards the end of winter, that tends to be a lot of time that's spent doing what's called cold patching, just kind of filling potholes, kind of get through that next paving season. The Department of Transportation, and Sean, I believe you may have worked on this when you were in Public Works. There's actually sort of an equity toolkit that's applied to our paving program. So a lot of times where communities feel like, you know what, you missed my street, well, why? There's a lot of decisions that are made from an equity standpoint, overlaid with the technical aspect of how we need to deliver on paving, and we follow what's called a PCI, a paving condition index. And based on that, our most recent PCI, I would probably say more than half of our streets are at or just above failing. And so year over year, the importance of that bond fund, last year we paved just almost 50 miles, which was almost a record year for paving in the city of Oakland. It takes time, investment, and intentionality on how often we are paving and the commitment. So I will say, as we move forward, that is the intention and the importance of us going through the bond issuance process. I will say the Director of Transportation is really trying to do more to get the Department of Transportation off of the general fund. We have special revenue funds, so we special funds so that we can specifically hone in on paving year after year after year and be more aggressive. The other thing is the technical delivery of our paving program. As you all probably have seen, some contractors out paving roads, year after year, community after community, whatever the case may be. One thing that we're really honing in on is trying to build in-house capacity or in-house team or teams to address paving in such a way, and many of y'all have been to Raimondi Park. As you all look at the infrastructure around Raimondi Park, the roads, that was all our own internal paving crew, and they did a fabulous job. So what we want to try to do is say, hey, look, if we have to contract out some of the major paving contracts on the long thoroughfares that we see in our community, then how can we, as our internal staff, handle the responsibility for some of our collector or arterial roads, while also recognizing the need for regular maintenance like patching potholes and things of that nature. Now, one thing, if I stop me, Sean, because I get long-winded, one thing that is important to acknowledge, a lot of times when we may see something like that, I mean, that's a huge pothole, but the issue may be what's happening beneath the surface, because a lot of times that is a failed water line up under the road, and so that water is eating that away, but the responsibility fortunately, that falls on a different entity, which is East Bay Mud, versus the city of Oakland, where we just kind of come through and try to do the best we can to make sure there's a safe surface, because when something happens, we're the ones that can get sued. And so that just tends to happen year after year after year. So that's kind of the dynamic that we have in place, but certainly don't want to spend too much time talking through that. I don't know, council member, is that okay? Good, okay, all right.
Thank you, sir. I'll add, folks, to the question about getting involved. I know we mentioned 311 earlier. One of the best ways that OCDOT has of actually tracking where our biggest potholes are is through getting feedback from the community through 311. I know that sometimes submitting potholes doesn't result in the city coming out and patching those as quickly as you would like. They are still really, really valuable pieces of information that you're providing, especially when you send a photo and the staff can see. Oftentimes you're trying to convey to us, no, this is a really serious one. This is a safety issue. When it is a safety issue and we can see that, it does help the department prioritize those pothole repairs. So 311 it remains a really important way to share that information with us. We have a lot of questions for our panel about police staffing, and parallel to that, we also have a lot of questions about police overtime. So I want to give us a few minutes to talk first about staffing, what the proposal does, how we arrived at 700 officers, what this budget does to get us there, and what the path forward from there looks like, and then separately we'll ask about the overtime question.
Thank you.
There we go.
Let's break that down into individual questions. What's the first one about the police overtime?
Staffing. Maybe we'll just use the one mic. How did we arrive at 700? What does this budget get us to? What's the long-term vision for staffing levels at OPD?
The long-term staffing levels, we recently authorized a report to be done to tell the city of Oakland exactly how many officers that we need. It was commissioned, a year or two ago? 2 years ago. Because there's been wild speculation around, does Oakland need 1,000 officers? Do we need 1,200 officers? And the recent report that came out said we needed around, 800? something like that. But the numbers, 700 are from Measure N, and it's the ballot initiative that was recently placed that replaced Measure Z. So those numbers are from the ballot initiative that Oakland voters approved, and we are currently at a operational strength of about 600? 610, which is, well, you know what?
No, Councilman, you're spot on. Yeah, so in reality, because, and you were tracking, the one thing I will say with respect to tangibly, the number of officers that are actually out on the street that you see on patrol is about 560 or so. And you have about 107 or so officers that are actually out on some injury or leave or some sort of discipline or what have you. So it's about 107. So when you really factor in the actual number of officers out in and throughout our communities, it's about 560 or so officers, and that number sort of changes depending on who's coming back. We have had a situation where we have officers that have been out for extended periods of time that are certainly being addressed. But Councilmember, you're spot on. And the commission, the study that was commissioned by the Office of the Inspector General that called for that 870 officers, that only captures the services that we currently provide today, how many officers are needed. That's how we got to how they got to the 878. Now, if we really factor in, like, what for quality services to make sure that all of our communities are supported across the board, so we don't have to use so much overtime, I can guarantee that number is significantly higher. And there are a number of benchmark communities that have been identified specific to the sheer number of officers. If I'm not mistaken, I think Long Beach, they're right at about 900 or so. When I talked to the city manager a couple of months ago, that's where they are. You have other communities that place more emphasis on enforcement. You may have about 1,000 to 1,100 officers. During my time when I was in the city of Atlanta, I know at the time Mayor Bottoms was trying to get to 1,000 officers before the end of her administration. So that number is certainly fluid, but where we stand right now is about 560 officers. And the rate of attrition, it can't be undersold. I think we all expect a level of public safety service at a baseline. One of the sheer challenges, just to be candid, that we have is the fact that there's so many departments that are offering hiring incentives. It makes it that much more of a challenge, not to even recruit, but just to retain those that you have, because historically, a lot of officers weren't transitioning to other departments because they didn't have what's called lateral academies. But now you have departments, everybody's struggling, and you see this in San Francisco and Fremont and Alameda. So that's the environment that we have right now.
Y'all want to hear the truth? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. And it is true. I do want to piggyback on what the city administrator said. Alameda alone is offering a $70,000 signing bonuses for officers who come to Alameda. And so that's significant. And the reality is, if you go to Alameda, you're not going to necessarily have to work as hard as a police officer as you might have to work in Oakland. So I believe it's important that we try to invest in a comprehensive public safety system that includes technology and other things, because the bodies are just not going to be there. The reality is, if you can go to a different city and make more money, you're going to do that, because you're not going to have the burden that you might have in the city of Oakland. You also, a lot of our officers don't necessarily live here, and the culture is a little different in those other cities as well, so it might be more comfortable. That said, technology is a big force multiplier that I'm looking into, and something that I also propose that's quite controversial but not new, because I don't believe in recreating the wheel, is, sorry for anybody who's disapproves, is civilianizing positions that can be done by non-sworn officers. In order to, I think it's just common sense. A recent report shows that we can move 38 officers from behind administrative work and into our business corridors, our residential corridors, to get officers into patrol immediately, if that was the choice. I, as a city council member, cannot make that decision. That is an administrative task. It would have to be in cooperation with the Oakland Police Department, the officers themselves, the city administrator's office. But this is legislation that was originally presented to the body of the city council in 2013, right? I recently brought it back last week at Rules and scheduled it to come to the Public Safety Committee. We have a lot more work to be done around that issue. We have a lot more conversation to have around that issue, but it is something that could yield more officers on the streets immediately if that is what the desire is. So that is something that I've done. Once again, it's controversial. There are some people that don't want to do that or don't think that that's the best course of action, but it's been brought in front of the city council several times. Absolutely.
I just want to add just a little bit to that, because I think what's important also in this piece is that there are 3 academies in the budget to help begin to bring through the pipeline new police officers. But also, we can't forget that as part of Measure NN and public safety strategy is violence prevention and crime prevention, and making sure that ceasefire is maintained and strengthened, as well as issues around human trafficking. And so violence prevention combined with additional staffing for policing through the academies, very difficult, but at least I see our council and our administration working together to try to get there. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you all.
Yeah.
I know we're a few minutes over, but we also did start a few minutes late. Would it be all right with the church and would it be all right with the crowd if we stayed about another 5-10 minutes? Is that okay? We want to answer some more questions? Okay, I'm hearing, and I saw a nod over here from our host. Thank you, thank you. Thank you to our panel. There was also, thank you, Mayor, you teed up 2 other questions that we had gotten in the cards, which is one, what's going on with the prevention funding? Are we funding ceasefire? Are we funding violence prevention? I'm sure this crowd wants an answer to that question. And then I do want to not skip the question that we got about overtime and what that means.
I think the mayor should answer. She ran on fully funding ceasefire, and we are fully funding ceasefire. It is, when I talked to the officer that, 2 of the officers that are over the ceasefire program, who've been with the city for 15 and 18 years respectively, they both said that that is the one proven strategy that the city has used that actually has results that are data-driven and can be quantified. So I think it's important that we try to get more of those. And as our mayor said, we look holistically at ways that we can prevent violence in the city of Oakland. I want to also state that a lot of the major issues that you all see on the news are from people who are coming into Oakland to engage in criminal activity. A lot of us that are born and raised here, it's not everybody, but a lot of us actually love this city and are not engaging in some of this activity. The stuff that you've seen at Lake Merritt, some of the things that you've seen in the news, there's some things that have happened in my district. Those are folks coming in, bringing their beef and letting that play out in Oakland. So again, we are having the strategies to deal with that, and it's important for you all to have those facts as well. And the question about overtime, I think I'm going to pass that to the city administrator.
Thank you. And just to be candid, I know there's a continued question about controlling and managing overtime. And I can't tell you I won't stand here and tell you that we have a magic bullet in place to control overtime. What I will tell you last year, and candidly, it's not a sexy answer, but managing, controlling, and maintaining a level of overtime as budgeted takes leadership. And what I mean by that, on last year, I sent Chief, well, we had a conversation first, but I sent Chief a memo. I said, Chief, you got to cut your overtime budget by $25 million. This is the budget straits that we're in. What has not happened as thoroughly as I would have hoped, as I understand, I wasn't here, but what I can tell you, when I sent Chief that message, it trickled down all the way to the sergeant's level. And historically, just in departments in the paramilitary organization, and I myself, and I've said this before, I've worn a uniform. If the message isn't trickling down to boots on the ground, then nothing's going to change. But when I sent that memo, it was made loud and clear from the command staff all the way down to the sergeant's level. If you really have to get a message out, it has to hit the sergeant's level and boots on the ground. When I issued that memo, and Chief and I had that conversation, and he understood the magnitude of the issue at hand, because they recognize, look, we got a role to play, and we want to be a part of the solution to address the budget deficit that we have. Last week, at our last Finance Committee meeting, we were presented with our Q3 quarterly report, and we are trending to be under budget in OPD overtime by almost on par by $25 million. That report is fact. And Councilman, if we need to share that, with folks that are here in this room, that Q3 report, so folks can actually see it. Now, granted, we still have another quarter to go. That's just the reality that we have. And I can't sit here and tell you we have some technical solution that is in place that's going to stop because of the nuance of how OPD overtime actually works, from shift extension to also the special details that OPD runs, sideshow details, helicopter unit, out here on patrol running radar, catching folks that's out here acting like a fool and act like they have no sense. All that's done on overtime. That's just the reality of the situation. And so I wish I had a better answer to say, here's how we can tangibly show how we can improve and control and manage overtime. I don't. All I can say is we have the leadership in place as it stands right now, and we have to fund some of the recommendations that have come from the city auditor's office quite a few years ago to implement that, but there's a cost. And so if the feedback that comes from these various town halls and that sort of thing, that we say, you know what, we really want that to be a priority, we just got to pay for it. And that's where we have. So I wish I had a better answer for that question. I've been asked quite a few times, but that's really sort of where we are at this point in time.
Thank you, sir. We have had a number of questions from the crowd about revenue, about different ways that the city can increase our revenue, diversify our revenue base. We got a lot of questions about supporting our businesses as well. So I want to sort of ask both questions. I got one from a business owner here in the front row who said, what specific funding allocation is proposed in this year's budget for business empowerment and economic development programs that support local festivals and arts organizations? Given Oakland's rich cultural heritage and the significant economic impact that festivals and arts events have on local businesses, from restaurants to retail to hospitality services, how can the city ensure adequate investment in these programs that create jobs, attract visitors, and generate tax revenue?
Okay, I think that's my cue. So it's a broad question. I'll try to go through it in different pieces. So we have a Department, Economic and Workforce Development. They've been working on a strategic plan, and part of that strategic plan also is how do you target specific markets to bring in more businesses to the Oakland economy? What sectors are we missing? What sectors could we target? What sectors could bring in additional revenue through property tax, business tax, sales tax, those sorts of things? If we can attract them to the city of Oakland, they may leave the city of San Francisco, they may leave other places and come to Oakland. But how do we get them here and promote the facilities, the land, the workforce that we have? So that's the economic and workforce development strategy for larger businesses to help bring back or revitalize the overall economy. When you look at small businesses and how can we help them, the economic and workforce development also utilizes some of the hotel motel tax money to provide grants and support to small businesses. There's like a facade improvement program. There's funding for arts, and they do that through the hotel motel tax. There's another component to the question. Revenue enhancement in other ways. So the finance department also has a project that we're undertaking to help bring in missing businesses through the business license tax. So if you're in business in the city of Oakland, you're supposed to have a business license tax. Some businesses don't know that they're supposed to do that. Some businesses have just kind of fallen off. They paid for a year or two, disappeared, and so we're going to find them, do the exploration or discovery process to make sure that they're in compliance, and we bring in those dollars. And then we're also, just trying to enforce the taxes that we already have. So parking taxes, making sure that none of us want to pay tickets, but I mean, if we're trying to get the services that we need, then we all need to pay our tickets. So if you're parking illegally or without a meter, or your meter expired, either pay the meter or pay the tax, the ticket. So we're doing that with higher level of enforcement, bringing those dollars in that we need. And then there's the sales tax that was just passed by all of you, thank you. And then there's a proposed parcel tax that tries to bring in longer term revenue to be the stopgap for the future years in terms of the structural deficit.
I think the city administrator wanted to add something.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. And one thing why this is so important to have these types of forums is, quite candidly, what is it as a business owner that you all feel as though, hey, look, here's what we need from a level of support. And I think that's certainly something that you're getting constructive feedback from you all, that would be extremely helpful. Because I think there's an element where we have to re-recruit those businesses that are here to keep you all. The other side, we also acknowledge that we have to compete, and we're competing as a community, as a region. I was reading a publication, I think the city of Lafayette and Moraga, their economic development team put forward a campaign where they were aggressively going after businesses in Oakland. And you can just read the narrative on what they've said. And in my mind, you know what, how do we compete in this type of environment? Because we got a whole heck of a lot to offer. But how are we selling? Oakland is a product. And for those that are, you got a product that's good, everybody gonna come get a taste. So, yeah.
So what I meant by that question is, before the pandemic, we used to have Afrotech, and I remember in 2018 when Afrotech was here, Morgan DeBond, she founded Afrotech and had it all the way here. And she said she wanted to have her 10-year anniversary in Oakland, but she can't. And so I remember in 2019 when Afrotech was at its highest, it brought millions of dollars to Oakland. We were like the hub, and what I was just saying to these young ladies over here was that Oakland is no longer the entertainment hub. It used to be like the Kendrick Lamar concerts, the Beyonce. They used to come to Oakland and San Francisco. So me as a business, I'm one of those businesses that Lafayette and San Francisco is trying to attract. But Oakland is not doing anything to make me want to stay. And I'm a Black woman that owns a business that employs 3 people that I pay those payroll taxes. So there's no incentive for me to stay. And I love Oakland. I'm a product of Oakland Public Schools. My parents are second generation from Castlemont. So I'm that prime example of a OSUD graduate that has her master's degree, and I have a business, right? So it's that what I'm talking about, like InvestFest, you're from Atlanta, I go all the way to Atlanta to get empowerment as a Black entrepreneur when I can't get it here. So that's what I'm talking about, where we need to be, where we can be the #1 entertainment hub for all type of entertainment for our youth as well as for other areas. So that's what I'm saying.
So I think that's a great point, and we are doing things. We recently restored close to $500,000 to our a fund for cultural arts to support festivals, and in order to leverage other TOT funds for cultural arts programs in the city of Oakland. In our downtown specific plan, we also are looking at working with our Economic and Workforce Development Department and building owners to activate vacant storefronts, similar to what they're doing in San Francisco with their Vacant to Vibrant program. They also have a lot more money than we do, and so it's going to take some of our public-private partnerships to support us through this time period when we don't necessarily have the resources like some of these other cities. So we are working hard to figure out what we need, and as our city administrator said, we need to hear directly from businesses. What do we need? So if we're having a fund, what does it look like to keep you here? What exactly specifically do you need so we can start building that out? Because we want Oakland to thrive.
Well, make sure I get on a committee.
What? Let's make sure we get Alicia on a committee, some committee, so she can help. And if anybody else wants to serve, we got 2 women of color, 3 sitting right here in the front row. You all want to be on boards and commissions too? Oh, let's go. Oh, we got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Going on 6. Anybody else want to be? 6. So definitely, because honestly, some of our best resources in the city of Oakland are our residents, our small businesses. And we have had a lot of small businesses open up in District 3 post the pandemic, despite people saying everybody is leaving. I just found out about 18 businesses in District 3, uptown, downtown, West Oakland, that are looking for people to patronize them. So we have the capacity just in our residency to feed into our businesses so they can thrive. But we cannot buy into the doom loop that says stay at home, don't go outside, everything is terrible. We need folks patronizing these businesses so they can be really, really successful here. I'm sorry, you have more questions, sir.
Actually, I think that may be where a good place to leave it.
Outstanding.
Thank you so much to our panel. Thank you to everyone who's participated in this conversation. Please give yourselves a warm round of applause. Thank you to our host. We'll hand it to you to give us the last word. Before I hand it fully off to you, sir, I just want to remind folks that if you're looking for ways to follow up, we'll be answering the questions we didn't get to today on oaklandca.gov/budget. All of the information about upcoming council meetings, all of the reports and records about the budget are on oaklandca.gov/budget. We want to make sure that you know everything that you want to know following up. We're thankful to these folks for signing up, and we will hand it over to our host to close us out.
Thank you so much. Let's put our hands together for our council person, Carol Fife, to our newly elected wonderful mayor, the Honorable Barbara Lee. Thank you so much. We're honored to be in your presence today, and to all of you that have participated. I just want to be brief. And thank you, first of all, for sharing this Saturday with us. It's so critical that we come together as a community, voice our concerns, and be empowered by the information that we have received. But also, as I opened up earlier, Mount Zion has been here in West Oakland for 103 years. 103 years. This is really the mother church of West Oakland, because most of the other historic black churches came out of this church. Most of them built their ministries. Even Allen Temple, the late Dr. J. Alfred Smith would tell you an awesome story how he built his education ministry from members of this church. This church has been historic. We brought in our people when they came here from the South to work in the shipyards at the Naval and all the places here in Northern California. We housed them. We housed the veterans when they returned to Northern California right here in this church. And so I share that to say this. A lot of what we're facing as a community, as a city, is perception. It's really perception. Because when you really look at the statistics, and I just served as a commissioner for the last 4 years on the SSOC commission. I brought ceasefire along with Michael McBride and others to our city. We have been on the forefront of pushing for violence reduction in our city. Numbers are really down, but no one's talking about that. All the different crime elements are down, and no one's talking about that. Prior to the COVID pandemic, we're on a record pace of gun violence in the city of Oakland. When you even break down Oakland by the various districts, West Oakland was one of the safest places in Oakland as far as gun violence. So what I'm sharing with you is we have to change the narrative. If you want people to do business here, we have to change the narrative. If I want people to attend services here and feel comfortable, it's up to us to change the narrative. So I share that as a community. Let's come together. Let's have facts. As I share with you, let's have facts and not rhetoric. Let's have facts and share that Oakland is a place that can thrive and that is thriving. And lastly, I wanted to say this. We're going to have another ceasefire night walk coming up shortly. I encourage all the members of the community, let's come together and let's walk through the community, let the community know we're here and that we care. And I guarantee you, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Let's all go to the Prescott Food Mart and get some pizza.